Word?
Yes, sir.
Turn to 2 Kings 17. We will get there shortly. And then also to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 2 weeks ago, the company I work for provided me with a new truck. This truck is theirs, is not mine. It was bought with a price. It was bought for me. It is provided to me, but the truck belongs to the one who purchased it. It does not belong to me. Everything I do it in their name. I do it as their representative. It's actually in my title, Product Support Representative. That's what I do. This new truck that they bought me has a very high-tech GPS system. It knows everywhere I go. It knows everywhere I am at any time of the day. And it knows and reports at all times my driving speed. When I received the truck, I received instructions with the truck. I was told that no matter the speed limit on the highway or road that I travel, that I'm to operate this truck 2 miles per hour below posted speed limit. If the speed limit's 70, drive 68. If it's 55, drive 53. If it's 30, drive 28. That's the instruction. It's kind of like the Messiah when he said, "You have heard it said before, you shall not murder, but I say unto you, if you have hatred in your heart without cause toward your brother." Well, the company I work for said, "You have heard it said that you shall drive the speed limit." We say unto you, you'll drive below the speed limit, right? Well, whatever their instruction concerning the operation of this vehicle, they have every right to insist that that instruction be followed. They purchase the truck, they provide the insurance, they provide the maintenance, they buy the gas. They also provide for my well-being as their representative. So I understand and I accept their right to insist that I follow it. And I understand that it comes with a warning that if I do not follow their instruction, the failure to do so will be recorded, it'll be transmitted in real time, and there will be a reckoning. I understand that. But for the last 2 weeks, I've become very aware that those who are not in my truck with me and who do not know the commitment that I've made to be in possession of that truck and the instruction that I was given to be in that truck, do not understand why I am driving in accordance with the posted speed limit signs on the highway. I am very aware that these people do not understand. On the interstate, it's not so bad. It's nothing like a country road that I often find myself on. On the interstate, there are plenty of lanes people can get around you. But on some of these country roads, that becomes a different story. Because on some of these country roads, the speed limit is 25 or 30 or even 40. And I'm having to drive below that, no matter where I am. And there's hardly any place for people to pass on most of these roads. Thursday morning, actually, just before 5 a.m., I'm going across this mountain, descending it, going into Scottsboro. In some places, the speed limit is 35 miles per hour. You get to the bottom of a mountain, there's places where it's 25 miles per hour. But by the time I got to the bottom of the mountain Thursday morning, I look in my rearview mirror and I count 6 cars stacked up behind me. Here's a surprising thing. When these people finally do get a chance to get around me, none of them roll their windows down and say, "Sir, I'd like to express to you my heartfelt gratitude at the courage that you are displaying in reminding me that it is illegal to exceed the posted speed limit signs even on a country road. Thank you for reminding me that I should obey the law." None of them give me a thumbs up. None of them say, "Sir, you are an inspiration." None of them say, "Sir, I was taught that it is impossible possible to drive the speed limit. Thank you for showing me that it can be done. I am positive that the words that they are mouthing are not, may you be blessed and prosper all the days of your life. And their hand gestures do not communicate to me that if we could just find a spot, pull over, they would love to hug my neck and show me how much they admire me. Instead, what I'm finding is that my abiding by the law frustrates them, angers them, and inconveniences them. They do not think they are wrong to drive above the speed limit. They know that it is perfectly acceptable and even expected that you should drive 5 to 8 miles per hour over the speed limit, unless it is a school zone. And then you drive the speed limit, but only then because there's a policeman or two sitting there to make sure you do. The accepted mindset is that if the speed limit's 70, you should drive between 75 and 78. It's expected. You get above that, you're taking a chance. But everybody expects, even the policeman expects you to drive 78. If it's 55, it's expected to drive 62, 63. Be careful if you get above that. And on country roads, the speed limit is actually based on your ability to handle your vehicle through a curve. If you can take it at 60, 65, then a high five is in order, right? I understand their frustration when they get behind me doing 33 and a 35. I understand it. But I'd also like to add that when they pass me, and they eventually all do, I do not roll my window down and shout at them, "You lawbreaker! Hey, can't you read the sign? I hope you get a ticket." Your ways are not my ways. No. Wouldn't do any good, would it? But if any of those people got in my truck, guess how I'd drive? I'd drive the way I was instructed to drive that truck by the people that own it. And when somebody in my truck would say, "Why are you driving this way?" I'd say, "Because this truck's not my truck. It was bought with a price. It was provided for me, and I represent the people who purchased it, and they've instructed me how the truck's to be driven." They might say, "Well, surely they know it's impossible to drive the speed limit. Surely they know that everyone drives a little bit above it. Surely they won't care if you speed up some. Surely it would be all right." And I'd have to respond, "Surely it will not be all right. Surely I owe them my compliance to their instruction. Surely how I drive is being recorded, and I want to hear, 'Well done.' Surely I don't want to be called before them and hear from them, 'Depart from me.'" Right? Well, what I'm describing to you is real. The last 2 weeks has been a learning experience, and it is very real. Every day, I have to be very mindful of the roads and the laws associated with those roads. I am learning, keeping, and doing those speed limits. Every day, I am finding that I am a nuisance, inconvenience, and frustration to others. I have yet to find anyone who is pleased with how I drive, except the one who purchased the truck and gave me the instruction on how to drive it. You in 1 Corinthians 6, verse 19. What? Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit which is in you, which you have of Yahweh, and you are not your own? For you are bought with a price. Therefore glorify Yahweh in your body and in your spirit, which are Yahweh's. Listen again carefully. You are not your own. You are bought with a price. Glorify Yahweh in your body and in your spirit. Your body and your spirit are Yahweh's. In the 7th chapter, verse 23, it says this, "You are bought with a price. Be not ye the servants of men." Quit obeying the commandments and instructions of men. They're not the ones that bought you. You are bought with a price. Peter said it this way in 1 Peter chapter 1. For as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of the Messiah as of a lamb without blemish, without spot. To redeem is to pay a ransom for. It's to purchase one who is in danger. Peter said we have been purchased because we were in danger. We don't belong to ourselves. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 says this, for the love of the Messiah constrains us, because we thus judge that if one died for all, then we're all dead. All of us were under that penalty of death. Verse 15. And that he died for all. Why did he die for all? And people might say, well, he died for all so he could save us. But listen to what it says. He died for all, that they which live should not henceforth, that they should never from this point forward live unto themselves, but unto him which died for them and rose again. He died for all, that they which live should live for him. That's strong, very strong. We're not to live unto ourselves, but unto him. Colossians chapter 2, verse 6. Colossians 2:6, as ye have therefore received Yeshua HaMashiach, so walk ye in him. You can't receive him and go on walking the way you walk. As you have received him, understand he has a right now to tell us how to live. 1 John chapter 2, verse 6. He that says, a lot of people say it, but he that says he abides in him ought himself also to walk even as he walked. If you're going to say, I abide in him, then you ought to walk like he walked. Live as he lived. The one who purchased us and abides in us told us to walk like he did. He walked according to Torah. Now, when we begin to do that, we're going to walk among family and friends and co-workers who do not do that. We're going to be living one way, they're going to be living another way. And you have been deceived in your own heart and by your own heart if you think that you're going to see this new way you are living, or that they're going to see this new way that you are living and be excited about it. They're not going to be. When we decide to live by Torah, we're going to irritate, frustrate, and aggravate all of those who do not yet know that they should follow Torah. We're going to irritate, frustrate, and aggravate all of those who are convinced that you don't have to. And we're going to irritate, frustrate, and aggravate all of those who know they should, but who have chosen not to. They're not going to come up next to you and call you an inspiration. They're not going to come up to you and say, thank you so very much for reminding me that I've been purchased with a price and that my Redeemer has a right to instruct me now on how I should live that life. No, instead, your abiding by the law is going to frustrate them, anger them, and inconvenience them. They do not think that they are wrong to break the law. They think it's the most righteous thing they can do. They think that in order to prove their allegiance to the Messiah, that they are supposed to not keep the law. That's the reason they look at you and ask questions with confused looks on their faces. They ask questions like, you don't eat bacon? You don't eat shrimp? You don't celebrate Christmas? What do you mean you don't do Easter? Why do you worship on Saturday? Don't you know that it was changed by the Messiah? Most of the time when they ask these questions, they're not seeking to understand why you're doing what you're doing. They're trying to communicate to you in a nice way that you're wrong trying to keep the law. The why are you doing that is, how could you be so stupid? Because the doctrines of men have taught them, everybody knows that you don't have to keep the law. The doctrines of men has taught them, Everybody knows that nobody drives the speed limit. Right? Now, as they blow past us in life, eating pigs and sea bugs and making fun of us because we don't, and ignoring the Sabbath and embracing the paganism of the holidays they celebrate, I don't know how much good it would do for us to hang our head out the window and shout at them, "Hey, you lawbreaker!" But at the same time, I also know it's imperative that we make sure that no matter what they say or how they act, we need to make sure that they know that we are committed to living the way that we have been instructed to live by the one who purchased us. And there's nothing they can say or do that's going to get us to compromise on that. And we should know that it is very likely that most of the people we know and love will never be pleased by the way we have chosen to live. There is one who's recording it who will be pleased. And that's the one that we need to focus on. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 says this, "Wherefore we labor that whether present or absent we may be accepted of Him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of the Messiah, that everyone may receive the things done in his body, according to that he has done, whether it be good or bad." We all will appear. Not some, not a few, but every one of us. And we're going to receive the things done in our body, according to how we did them, whether it was good or bad. Therefore, here's what the Bible reminds us of. Look in Ephesians 4. Then we'll move over to 2 Kings 17. Ephesians 4. "This I say therefore and testify in the Master, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of Yahweh through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart. Do not live like they live." Follow the instruction that the one who purchased you has given to you. Notice it says the vanity of their mind, understanding darkened, ignorance and blindness. Their issue is the vanity of their mind. Their understanding is darkened. They're ignorant and they're blind. Here's what all of that means. They have been deceived into believing in their minds that they are not accountable for walking according to Torah. Not accountable. It is ignorance that makes them believe that. It's ignorance to think that it doesn't matter how you live. It's ignorance to think it's my life, I can live it any way I please. And it's ignorance to think the Messiah lived perfectly obeying the law for me, so I don't have to obey it since He did it. That's a darkened understanding. So the instruction and the warning given to us in Ephesians 4 is, don't live like that. Live your life like the one who purchased you tells you to. Drive your truck like the one who purchased it told you to drive it. And now, before I go on to 2 Kings 17, I said we're going to go there, and we are. Did you read 1 and 2 Kings? Let me share with you another thought I had a few days ago before we go there and read it this morning. I had another person, we hear it all the time, but I had another person come up to me, or I was in their presence and heard them say, "Well, it's impossible to keep the law." And immediately when I heard it this time, because I know what they're saying. What they're saying is it's impossible to keep it, so it's foolishness to try. Since it's impossible, why even put forth the effort? We should just simply concentrate on walking in love and learning how to worship. That's what we need to do. We don't need to worry about keeping the law. But immediately when I heard it, this thought came to me. I wonder what these people would think if I changed the way I do wedding vows. What if I said, Johnny, do you take Betty Sue to be your wife? Do you promise to love her, honor her, comfort, and care for her? And do you promise to be faithful to her all the days of your life? And as you make these promises, Johnny, please know that everyone here agrees that it's impossible for you to keep the promises I just asked you to make. No one really expects that you will. Do you think Betty Sue would lean over and whisper to Johnny, it's okay, Johnny. I know that these vows are impossible to keep. And I know that the temptation to be with another woman is going to be too difficult to resist. I know that you're going to still date other women after we get married, but it's okay. These vows are impossible. And Johnny, I'm going to date other men too. Right? That's absurd, isn't it? But yet, Yahweh said, walk in my statutes, and men say, we can't. Yahweh said, keep my commandments, and men say they're too hard. Yahweh said they're not hard, they're not difficult. Men say, yes, they are hard, and they are difficult. Yahweh said they're life and peace and truth and good and holy, and he never once changed his mind about it. Right. He never reconsidered and said, oops, I made these way too hard, never mind, let me rethink this. He never said, I now see that the temptation to eat bacon is way too great. What was I thinking? Fry it up, it's okay with me now. He never reconsidered and said, you know what? I now know that Ishtar's bunny and her eggs and her sunrise services are fun for the kiddos. And I now see where just bringing in a little bit of that would be good for evangelism. Forget what I said about learning the ways of the heathen. Go ahead and bring that in. See, it's the vanity of a person's mind and a darkened understanding and ignorance and blindness that causes people to say and do things like that. It's an understanding darkened that makes people say it's impossible to keep the law. It's really an insult in the face of Yahweh to say such a thing. When you say it's impossible, when a person says it's impossible to keep the law, what they have actually said is, I am not wrong for not keeping the law. You are wrong for telling me I've got to do something that I can't do. They are pointing their finger at Yahweh for expecting us to keep it. You're in 2 Kings chapter 17. We've been talking about the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel. We've been talking about the sins of Samaria, the sins of America. And last week I told you we'd look at the list given to us in 2 Kings 17, which explains to us why the northern kingdom of Israel fell. And I'll just go ahead and give you the conclusion. The conclusion of it all is because they decided that they didn't really have to keep all the law. It was really too hard and too difficult. And they decided bringing in some of the customs of the heathen wasn't really a bad thing. They decided that even though Yahweh had gone into Egypt and purchased them and brought them out, that they didn't have to live like he said live. You there, 2 Kings 17? Yes, sir. Let's pick up reading in verse 6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria, in the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria. Hoshea was the king of Israel. The king of Samaria is the region known as Israel. And he carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. Now this took place in 722 BC. It was 200 years after they had made Jeroboam their king. Remember us talking about that a week or two ago? They had made Jeroboam their king. 200 years later, they're taken into captivity. Well, actually dispersed. 200 years after they had decided they needed to break away from Jerusalem, break away from Judah, and they needed to set up their own holy cities and create their own holy days. 200 years after that, thousands of them get slaughtered, and the remainder are forcibly removed out of the land, out of their homes, off of their property, and scattered among the nations. All of them. Now, as we read, the writer of 2 Kings wants us to know why that happened. It was not because Yahweh's arm was shortened. It was not because Yahweh wasn't able to save them from Assyria. Their fall was their own fault. Listen to what it says. Verse 7, for so it was. You see that? For so it was. He just told us they were carried away by the king of Assyria. Now he says, I want you to understand why that happened. Why do we need to understand why it happened? Because we don't want to make the same mistake they made. Right. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their Elohim, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other Elohims. What is sin? Transgression of the law. So what it actually says, here's why they fail. Because the children of Israel transgressed the law of Yahweh. That's why they fail. It would have never happened. But we said it this way last week, you cannot remain blessed and powerful and reject Torah. You can't do it. As long as they followed Torah, they were blessed and powerful. When they rejected Torah, they could not remain that way. Verse 8, and they walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel which they had made. This word here, translated statutes, means customs or manners or rituals. They began to adopt certain customs, certain rituals, certain manners. See, Yahweh establishes customs and manners. False gods also have customs and manners. Israel, Samaria had begun to walk in the customs and the manners of the heathen. And these customs and manners were connected to the worship of false deities. Now, how did they do that, or why did they do that? We'll come back to this verse, and we'll look at it in just a little bit. But let's read on for right now. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against Yahweh their Elohim, and they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. Most of the time when you see that word grove, does anybody know what that word really is? Yes, it's Ashtoreth or Ishtar. It is a reference to a column that is put in place to represent the Babylonian fertility deity Ishtar. How they come up with the word grove from the word Asherah, I have no idea, other than they just didn't want to put what it really is. Possibly and probably this is a reference to the first use of steeples. Right. Verse 11. And there they burn incense in all the high places, as did the heathen, whom Yahweh carried away from before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yahweh to anger. Verse 12. For they served idols, whereof Yahweh had said unto them, you shall not do this thing. Now understand, it says here they served idols, but in their minds they had been taught to think that they were actually serving Yahweh. They had adopted customs and manners, statutes of the people around them, but they thought they had dedicated these to Yahweh and they were serving Yahweh. But it says plainly they were serving the idols. Yahweh says when you use their customs and their manners, their manners and their rituals, those cannot be used to serve me because I will not accept them. You're serving those deities. Verse 13. Yet Yahweh testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, turn you from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers and which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. The mercy of Yahweh is new every morning. The mercy of Yahweh is everlasting. Yahweh did not just turn his back on them when they messed up. He sent prophet after prophet. He gave vision after vision. That's who the seers are. Vision after vision to people to warn them they're in trouble. And up until the time they are taken away, he is pleading with them to turn from their wicked ways. All they had to do was repent and turn back to him, and he could have saved them. But they wouldn't repent. Yahweh testified against Israel and Judah by the prophets and by the seers. He personally warned them over and over again. Actually, let's go back and look at what happened before the nation split. Go, keep your finger here. We're going to come back and read some more, or keep something there. But look in 1 Kings 9. 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 1. And it came to pass when Solomon had finished the building of the house of Yahweh and the king's house and all Solomon's desire which he was pleased to do, that Yahweh appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared unto him at Gibeon. And Yahweh said unto him, I have heard your prayer and your supplication that you have made before me. I have hallowed this house which you have built, to put my name there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. And if, everybody say if you will walk before me as David your father walked, in the integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I have commanded you, and will keep my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom upon Israel forever, as I promised to David your father, saying, there shall not fail thee a man upon the throne of Israel. Yahweh said, if you will keep my commandments, then I can do this for you. But, verse 6, if you shall at all turn from following me, you and your children, and will not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, but go and serve other Elohims and worship them, then I will cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them. And this house which I have hallowed for my name will I cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people. I will cast you out of my sight. Now what Yahweh did, and this is where we're at, going back to 2 Kings 17, as they begin to turn away from them, he's bringing them back to this instruction. He's warning them over and over again, you need to turn from this. He sent them Elijah. He sent them Elisha. He sent them Hosea. He sent them Amos. He sent prophet after prophet after prophet to tell them, turn back. Reject these teachings you've gotten from Jeroboam. Turn back. And they would not be warned. Back to 2 Kings 17, verse 14. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like the neck of their fathers that did not believe in Yahweh their Elohim. Well, why would they not hear? These prophets come and tell them that they're to follow the instruction of Yahweh. But it says here they wouldn't listen. Why wouldn't they listen? You remember what Hosea said? Hosea said the doctrines they believed and the commandments they followed were so far off base that when somebody dared to speak Torah to them, it sounded like a strange thing. Let me read it to you. Hosea 8:12. I have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. The law sounded strange. A prophet that came and referred back to Torah sounded like he was talking a foreign language to them. So it was easy to reject him. They thought they were still honoring and serving and worshiping Yahweh, and these prophets were just a bunch of lunatics. They had fallen so far from Torah, when they heard Torah, it sounded weird. Verse 15. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom Yahweh had charged them that they should not do like them. Over and over and over again we're told not to do like they do. Notice the three things they rejected. The word rejected there means to cast off, cast away, to refuse, or to despise. They cast away Yahweh's statutes. This is not the same word we saw used earlier that is a reference to customs or manners. This is a reference to the decrees of Yahweh. The things that He has decreed or appointed that should be done, they cast that away. They cast away and rejected His covenant. He said that if you will do these things, I'll be your Elohim, you shall be my people. They cast that covenant aside and said, well, no, we want you to be our Elohim, but we're not going to do all that stuff written in Torah. And they cast off the testimonies. That is, they refused to hear anyone that Yahweh sent to them to testify against them the wrong that they were doing. Verse 16, they left all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim. Look at that again. They left all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove and worshiped all the host of heaven, and they served Baal. Look that word up, left. They left all the commandments of Yahweh. That word actually means to loosen. They didn't leave all the commandments, they just loosened them all. They're too strict. We don't have to be that strict with them. So they loosened them up a bit. When it said, you shall not learn the way of the heathen, they said, well, as long as we dedicate it to Yahweh, we can take and adopt this practice. Are you following me? That's what it means to loosen it. They didn't just out and out reject that commandment, they just loosened it up a little bit. Do you remember what the Messiah said? He said, do not think that I came to destroy the law. You ever look that word destroy up? That word destroy means to loosen. He said, don't think I came to loosen it up. Verse 17, they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire. They used divination and enchantments. They sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yahweh to provoke Him to anger. Sold themselves. They sold themselves. In other words, they found some payment in doing it. There was some reward for doing it. And they were more interested in the reward for doing it than they were in walking in obedience. Verse 18, therefore, see, He's explaining to us why they fell. He's told us all the things they did, and He says, verse 18, therefore Yahweh was very angry with Israel, and He removed them out of His sight. What did He tell Solomon He would do? He said, I'm talking to you about your children and your children's children. You better teach them, because if they don't walk in my statutes, I will remove them out of my sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. Verse 19, also Judah kept not the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, but walked in the statutes of Israel which they made. So he lets us know, just in a kind of in parentheses, Judah's in trouble too, but they'll not be taken into captivity till 136 years later. They'll stay another 136 years. They'll be taken into Babylonian captivity around 586 BC. Verse 20, and Yahweh rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers until He had cast them out of His sight. Second time it says it. What did He tell Solomon He would do? I'll cast them out of my sight. He keeps His word. Verse 21, for He rent Israel from the house of David. This is also was referenced as Samaria. And they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. Never says Yahweh made him king. They made him king. And Jeroboam drove Israel from following Yahweh and made them sin a great sin. This word translated drove means to mislead and draw away. It means to draw somebody away and convince them it's the right thing to do. Verse 22, For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them. No matter how many times they were warned, the doctrines of men meant more to them than the teachings of Torah. Verse 23, until Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight. There it is the third time. As he had said by all his servants and the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. They did not get carried away by surprise. They were warned numerous times, not just in the vision to Solomon, but with prophet after prophet after prophet. Yahweh is going to take you out of his sight if you keep doing this. And they would not listen. Well, all of these things didn't happen overnight. It was little by little that people began to be moved away from Torah. The commandments were loosened up just a little bit here and a little bit there, until the people were convinced that they were still worshiping Yahweh even though they weren't walking in Torah. They had to do it a little bit at a time, generation after generation. Loosen it up here, loosen it up there, and then eventually you get a whole nation of people who are convinced they're worshiping Yahweh even though they're not following his instruction. The sins of Samaria, the sins of America. It's been the same way in our own nation. People are not ignoring or rejecting Torah because they want to reject the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They don't reject Torah because they don't want to have anything to do with the Messiah. No, they're rejecting Torah because through the decades they have been slowly and deliberately driven away from Torah and made to believe that they are now loosened from obeying it. That they can actually have a greater relationship with Yahweh and with the Messiah if they don't try to keep the law. Instead, they just learn how to worship and walk in love. They have been made to believe that they can participate in the customs and the rituals of the heathen as long as they dedicate it to Yahweh when they do it. How is it possible to dupe people into believing such a lie? Because it's a lie. It's a direct contradiction of everything the Bible says. The Bible says don't learn their ways. The Bible, we're warned over and over again, don't bring in their customs, don't bring in their manners. But yet most of Christianity is saturated with the customs and manners that have their origin in paganism. Right? So how is it possible to dupe people into believing that that is acceptable? Well, I told you we would return to verse 8. So go back up there. Actually, we'll pick up in verse 7. And let's learn how this deception happens. You there? Verse 7. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their Elohim, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other Elohims, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. They walked in the statutes of the heathen, and they transgressed the law of Yahweh. How do you get a people to do that? How do you get them to embrace customs and rituals of heathen and reject Torah as if it's the strange thing? How does that take place? The answer is in verse 9. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against Yahweh their Elohim. How did they do them? Secretly. Now, this word does not mean that they worshiped Ishtar and Baal behind closed doors in a secret chamber at night where no one could see them doing it. This word secretly means to encase something, to cover it. It means to act covertly. To act covertly means to disguise and to conceal. How do you get people who want to worship the Elohim of Abraham? How do you get them to serve Ishtar? It's simple. You disguise the worship of Ishtar as if you are doing it unto Yahweh. You make it about the resurrection. You make it about Yahweh's greatness. You disguise it so that it looks like you're doing it for Him, but the very custom you're doing is serving Ishtar. How do you get people who want to worship Yahweh to worship Baal and Saturnalia and to participate in the rituals of Druid priests? You disguise it all as if it has something to do with the birth of the Messiah. You declare December the 25th to be the day of the birth of the Son of Yahweh. You disguise it. You conceal the true origin and the meaning of it as much as possible. You conceal it. Yet you get people to do all the pagan customs and train them to think it's all about Yahweh. And after a generation or two of doing that, you have people raised up who will fight you for those customs and rituals and manners and traditions, because in their heart they're convinced that they are being done for Yahweh. It's been so disguised, so concealed, so hidden that they are worshiping Ishtar secretly. The secret is they don't even know they're doing it. They're serving Saturnalia, and the secret is they don't even know they're doing it. Yahweh wasn't pleased then, and He's not pleased with it now. Yahweh warned that He would not accept it from the beginning, and He hasn't changed His mind. The sins of Samaria caused them to be cast out of Yahweh's sight, and America's churches need to awaken to that reality. Yahweh will do the same again. Messiah said that many will say unto me in that day, Master! And I will say unto them, depart from me. Get out of my sight. I don't even know who you are. You who are lawless. Well, I drive my truck according to the instruction given to me by the one who purchased it. We should live our lives according to the instruction of the one who purchased us. I cannot be concerned or influenced with how everybody else is driving down County Road 8. Neither can we be concerned or influenced with how everyone else is living. If my obedience to the laws of the road irritates, aggravates others, I just have to know that it pleases the one who matters. And if our obedience to Torah irritates and aggravates others, we have to be convinced that it pleases the one who matters. Stand up. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. As I put His name upon you, so shall He bless you.